Yeah, especially that the later generation, the guys like Jimmy Page, who bought actually Beliskin House of Crowley, right?
Right.
Which actually burned down several years ago completely.
It was set on fire.
So they say. So they say. I don't know if it's completely true. They say it was completely demolished, but I didn't see the pictures of it. So
the story I heard
with,
the story I heard with that was, I have a friend when I was in England. I have a friend who still lives over there. I mean, he lives there. He's from England, and he travels all around. And he had told me about Beliskin House being burnt to the ground. The story that I had heard was that the person who it had just been sitting there for years. It was purchased, and they were planning on turning the house into like an Aleister Crowley museum or like recreation center, where literally people, Thelemites, people in the OTO could actually go and conduct rituals. There was going to be ritual rooms, meditation rooms, Aleister Crowley memorabilia on display. And the story that I was told was the villagers wanted no parts of it and set it on fire. So who knows?
Yeah, and you know that the symbology and the portrait of Aleister Crowley is all over the Led Zeppelin covers for the past 50 years. But the most spicy detail, I think, is that you probably heard the rumor that it used to be rumored that actually the Barbara Bush is the daughter of Aleister Crowley. The rumor is not.
That one.
Okay. So look into the pictures of Barbara Bush when she was young, and look at the pictures of Aleister Crowley in a similar age. So let's say when he was about 40, 45 years old, and look at the pictures of Barbara Bush. But the rumor is not completely unfounded. Actually, the Pauline Pierce, the mother of Barbara Bush, she went to Thelema, to the Sicily, where Aleister Crowley ran his abbey, so-called abbey, where he was conducting the sexual rites. And so basically every woman who went there, they slept with Aleister Crowley, because he made the gangbangs during the entire year. So there are plenty of witnesses who actually stated this. So it was the a very, very well-known secret, so-called. Okay, so she came back to the U.S. and she was actually a married woman. She was married to the Mr. Pierce, and so they say she was pregnant, which is probably true. We don't know if the father is Aleister Crowley or not. But anyway, there's a resemblance between the Barbara Bush and Aleister Crowley. And I watched one of the press conferences of Bush Jr. when the Candy Crowley, the senior White House correspondent who worked those days for CNN, she raised a hand and she wanted to ask a question of George Bush Jr. and he called her a cousin. So how about that? So. Yeah. Of course, she was born in 1948, and Crowley died in 1947, which eliminates probably, most likely, the fathership of Aleister Crowley to Candy Crowley. But if you look at the portrait of Candy Crowley, let's say 10, 15 years ago, and look at the Aleister Crowley, they're probably related. And moreover, Mr. Nathan Crowley is the grand niece of grand nephew of the Aleister Crowley, and he is in Hollywood the prop manager for blockbusters such as The Dark Knight and dozen of others. And I read his interview about 15 years ago, and he said, "Yeah, Aleister Crowley is the actually father of my brother of my grandfather." So he would have been his great uncle. Yeah. So basically, the interconnection between these people in Hollywood and Aleister Crowley, and actually the existence of some props which are questionable, how they got on the set, for example. You remember in The Dark Knight they had the Sandy Hook. Right. This is also a very, very well-known fact. They made the maps, for the promotion in 2012, and there's a clear shot of this map, and they actually were distributing this map as a merchandise. It says Sandy Hook, and those are strikes where the Dark Knight was supposed to be striking, the Bane, right?
Right.
So, and Mr. Nathan Crowley was a prop master for this blockbuster, and the guy who actually was directly involved in running and managing the props for the Dark Knight, he died. You know where? In Newtown. So he went on his truck and he was hit by someone else by the other truck. He went out of the truck. He was completely maybe just bruised, not even seriously injured. He was taken by the ambulance to the Newtown hospital, and he never went alive.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and his wife, you can maybe find it somewhere online. His wife was actually raising some kind of problems about the board of parents in the school board, and this is the same school, Sandy Hook, where you know what happened later.
Shooting. Right.
Yeah. So the husband dies in Sandy Hook, and Jake, what was the name of the other of the Hunger Games? She's also from Newtown. Just by sheer coincidence. So this kind of people where this kind of coincidence where all these people and all this occult families are somehow interconnected by either by same movie they actually participated in, or they just interrelated. So
right.
This is mind blowing to me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and it is when you start looking at it and you look at the stuff with like Sandy Hook, and then like you said, like, you know, with Kennedy and 9/11. I mean, it's just these same numbers and these same things just keep turning up all over again. It's like, you know, you start asking, you know, what the hell is going on here? I mean, how can this just be some sort of massive coincidence? And it can't be. I mean, it's just, you know, too strange. And like you said, you get something, you know, happening in real life, and then you go back and then there's something in a movie that seems to foretell it, or some actor or you know, who's related to this person. I mean, it's just like, you know, mind-boggling, you know, the amount of the occult, you know, with all this stuff.
I watched one show. You actually you were interviewed by one of the radio channels, and you mentioned that those movie studio bosses, they were all Freemasons. But I believe when they started the movie studios in the beginning of 1920s, I don't think they were Freemasons, because they were very poor, and then they were very, let's say, how should I put it correctly? Not the background which actually permits them to be a member of Freemasonry. So maybe they became somewhere along the way climbing the corporate ladder, but I don't believe they actually from the outset were Freemason, because they came penniless to Hollywood, and somehow they're having very sharp sense of what the people would like to watch. They made the money because they were selling the products which were well thought after by the people. But I don't think from the outset but somehow they chose this place, Hollywood, which is clearly states Hollywood is the magic wood of which the magic wands were made of by druids. So the location was chosen on purpose. It's clear to me. But why did they find this location? Why they chose this location while not being actually the members of any secret society, at least from the outset? Of course, with the years, Mr. Meyer and Goldwyn and all the others, big studio bosses, they became Freemasons. But how from the outset they were all involved into the occult, or did they get involved in the occult while doing the movies? This is, to me, a very fascinating question.
Yeah, the guys, all the founders of the major Hollywood studios were Masons by and large. Like the Warner Brothers, Metro Goldwyn Mayer. I give a list in one of the books where they were all Masons. I couldn't tell you when they became Masons, but they all became Masons eventually. A lot of the Golden Age actors were, Clark Gable. There's loads of them that were Freemasons. I think Douglas Fairbanks Sr. was another one. The only one who wasn't a Freemason is the one who everyone says that he was, but he wasn't, is Walt Disney. Walt Disney was not
he was Demolay, but Demolay is affiliated with Freemasonry.
Sure.
But
he never went through the Blue Lodge, but he was Demolay, which is, like you said, the Masonic Boy Scouts. And he was also J. Edgar Hoover's spy in Hollywood. Hoover was a Freemason. Disney was his spy, trying to weed out left-wing causes. It was a different world back then. But it is odd to think that, I don't know if it was intentional, or it was like or a byproduct, but how all these movies, there are some movies that are obviously very outwardly occult, movies about witchcraft or, monsters, you get into the, early days of Hollywood, the Universal movies, Frankenstein, Dracula, the Wolfman. These are all movies that have these kind of outwardly occult themes, magic, sorcery, the supernatural. But then you get into sort of the movies where it's just a story, but they seem to have these hidden meanings, and like, what we've been talking about, where you can kind of go back and look at them, where they seem to be predicting, whether it be 9/11 or the 3 Mile Island incident with the China syndrome, which came out like 2 weeks before 3 Mile Island. It's just really, uncanny. When you ask yourself, what's going on here? And like I said, it's one of the things that, I've written books about. But, it strikes me, in my opinion, just after looking at this stuff for as long as I have been, some of it, to me at least, seems to be beyond the realm of the human hand. It would just be so hard, I think, just for humans to coordinate this and to plot it out. And to me, it strikes me as more, this is emanating from the world of the supernatural. Whether it's positive or negative, I can't determine yet. But a lot of this stuff, in my opinion, is coming from some sort of supernatural realm. That's my take on it.
It can be actually both of it, because there might be the conspiracy or the long playing plans, but there's definitely some kind of God's hands at play. But actually, the first movie where I spotted 9/11, it stems from 1929, because it starts from the passage 9/11. I believe it's about Noah, so I think it's about the deluge. I forgot the title of the movie, but it's 1929, and it states verses 9 and 11.
Right.
It was the first one, and the next one is I believe it's only money or something like 1934, because they show in the Twin Towers on a very fuzzy picture on the wall, which looks like a twin tower, or which were, of course, weren't built yet. There's still 30 something years to go to start the building in 1968. But there are different movies which are showing 9/11 or Twin Towers in the 30s and in the 40s. And there's one movie which shows actually, but very surreptitiously, it shows the Bush, but it's Mr. Busher or Jingle Busher. But it looks like when you read the inscription on the door, it looks like a Bush, like George Bush.
Right.
So it's a long running project. And by the way, very interesting fun fact. I believe it was John D. Rockefeller which tried to construct the famous architect of Spain, Mr. Gaudi, to build the tallest hotel, which was supposed to be called the Attraction, on the very spot where later the Port Authority built WTC, Twin Towers. And I believe the Gaudi asked too much money from the Rockefeller, the actual name of Rockefeller was never revealed. They said one of the wealthy individuals in New York, but I believe there could have been only one who actually could afford such a project. But even him couldn't pay the estimate which Gaudi asked, and the project was ditched and surfaced only in 1958 in one of the architectural magazines, and became public only in the 90s. But what is interesting that Google Doodle showed the birthday of Antonio Gaudí, and it was 161st birthday, not 160s, not 150s, 161st. So because it's 9/11, if you just rearrange the numbers, and you know what the doodle actually ran, what they represented, it was one of his houses in Barcelona. It's a very famous house because I used to be a guide in Barcelona, so I guided the people to the various creations of Gaudí. So one of the very famous creations of Gaudí is a house which is called La Pedrera, so kind of a stone house or something like this. So it looks with some kind of bizarre looking columns on top of the roof, well, among of other things, because Gaudí used to make pretty bizarre looking buildings. And one of the pillars looked like on the Google Doodle, looked like a portrait of who, Osama bin Laden.
Huh.
Yeah, and if you looked how Google arranged the picture, it looks like portrait of bin Laden, and then one of the pillars represents 9, and 2 other represent 11, and there's a plane flying over it. And 161st birthday of Antonio Gaudí. They never celebrated 150th. Okay, 150th was prior to the Google creation, but they never celebrated 160th or 155th birthday of Gaudí, and never celebrated any birthdays of Gaudí ever since. So they chosen particular 161.
Yeah.
So.
There was a couple things that reminded me of what the story you were telling me in I forget which one it is. I think it's the James Bond movie. It's the first one with Timothy Dalton, which I think it's not License to Kill.
The only License to Kill, I think it was the first, 1990.
No,
License to Kill.
Was it License to Kill? What? No, it was the one before that. It was the first Timothy Dalton where he's in the Middle East and he gets kidnapped by the Russians, and he gets sprung by the Mujahideen, and they make a big deal of it. So this is the Mujahideen coming to rescue James Bond, and the guy who rescues him in the jail cell looks just like Osama bin Laden, who's head of the Mujahideen. He looks just like him, and they escape on a plane. And it's again one of those things where you just can't help but think of 9/11. And then I was reading the thing with the Twin Towers, how someone was saying, oh, well, the Twin Towers, you get into the Freemasonry. It's a duplication of Jachin and Boaz from Solomon's Temple. But of course, there's the other, the pillars of Hermes, Thoth, Enoch. And of course, the pillars of Hermes, which is what they were known to the Greek. Of course, Hermes is the god of trade and commerce. Hence, you have the World Trade Center. And then you had the building 7 of all things, which was right across the street, 47
Solomon
floors.
Brothers. Solomon Brothers.
Solomon Brothers. It was 47 floors, 47th problem of Euclid, Pythagorean theorem. I mean, you just can't make that stuff up. I mean, that's just too hard. And one of the things that was really interesting with it was someone was saying, oh, well, if this is all emblematic of Solomon's Temple and Freemasonry, well, why do you want to destroy it? And I was on a show and I said, well, this could have something to do with the age of Aquarius starting, the end of Pisces ending. And actually, if you go back and you read the works of Isaac Newton, of all people, Newton said in one of his books, he said he had synced the building of Solomon's Temple with the precession of the equinoxes. So the whole thing with the building of Solomon's Temple and its destruction was the herald and signal of these ages ending and starting. So, yeah, I mean, it's just too much.
Is this from a book of View on the Prophecy of Daniel? I believe it was called View on the Prophecy, because of one of his main alchemical books.
It's
It was
it's
called.
right here. I could go get it for you if you want me to get it real
Yeah,
quick.
yeah. Very
Hang on.
interesting.
The Isaac Newton book is Newton's Revised History of Ancient Kingdoms.
Okay, this one I don't know because I read only main one, The View on the Prophecy.
Yeah, he gets into some really occult themes in this thing, and he gets into how he gets into astrology with Solomon's Temple, the search for the Golden Fleece, but he was convinced somehow. I have to go back and look at it that Solomon's Temple synced with the precession of the equinoxes. That the whole thing with Solomon's Temple was the building and its destruction was an allegory. And of course, this is what Masonry is all about: is the Well, it starts with the building of Solomon's Temple, and then of course the high degrees revolve around the building of the second temple, the heart of Babylon, the Temple of Zerubbabel. So this again all ties into what Newton was saying, and Newton got into how this was all synced to the astrological, the Platonic year, this movement of the sun into this one from house to house to house with the zodiac. Very fascinating.
Yeah, 1 degree each 72 years, I believe.
72 years. That's it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, very interesting to read this book. Actually, in 2005, there's another book of Newton's surface somewhere on the attic of one of the London's houses. Someone found it, and they say the book was encoded by Newton, and they believe it was about the alchemy, the pure alchemical book, and it was completely encoded by him. And ever since 2005, there's no news whether someone actually decoded the book, and they don't even say anything about the whereabouts. So it's very, very, very bizarre news was back then in 2005. Same as in 2003, just prior to the intervention of the U.S. and allies into Iraq, the German archaeologist Mr. Schneider, I believe. No, Fassbender, Mr. Fassbender from the Munich University. They claim they found the Tomb of Gilgamesh in Uruk, and within several weeks, the invasion of U.S. and allies took place, and the Stars and Stripes magazine, not the magazine, the newspaper of the U.S. Army, actually reported that they settled the air base, the Allied air base, right next to this place where they supposed to be found the believed Tomb of Gilgamesh. And ever since April of 2003, there were no reports of whatsoever what they've done with the Tomb of Gilgamesh. I tried to contact Mr. Fassbender in Germany, and he refused to comment. And it was very strange. And then several years ago, when there was a leak of the WikiLeaks over the emails of Hillary, I went into the Freedom of Information section of the State Department, and there was a document actually stating that someone, when they made a FOIA request about the emails of Hillary Clinton, I found the email by Hillary Clinton, which was requesting information of the Gilgamesh tomb and Nephilim.
Wow.
Believe it or not, I found the exact location because it was very difficult to find on a FOIA page of State Department. They probably migrated the file several times, so this is how they hide the things. They don't actually remove it, but they hide it. They hide it. They change the pages, and I've heard it from this technique. I've heard it from the special prosecutor John Loftus. He said he had a higher clearance while he was investigating the high position Nazis which fled to the U.S. and they were taking different positions in the U.S. government. And he said that when he had access to the different Pentagon files and CIA files, when he went into archives, this is how they were hiding the papers. They were just misplacing, so-called accidentally misplacing the files.
Right.
And they were all over in different places where they actually didn't belong. So now the State Department does the same thing. But I found the file. I actually made a video about this, so I know current location, but they might change it again. So Hillary Clinton was requesting in email one of her aides. I don't remember what the name of the aide. It was some kind of foreign name, maybe Hindu name or something like that. Please provide information pertaining the Tomb of Gilgamesh and the Nephilim. And the email is from 2015. 2015, when she was still the State Secretary of State. So very interesting, because I never ever saw any information in the public space about what happened to such an enormous archaeological find, which actually proves the Epic of Gilgamesh and somehow indirectly proves the deluge story in the Bible, because they are both very similar.
Right, of course, yeah. It's strange. It's strange how you can't find stuff after it happens online, and it seems to be removed.